Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Andrew Yang's most recent big event, the CNN presidential town hall, that has came just a few days after the Iowa caucus, and Yang absolutely crushed every single question he got asked, and you can tell that he is taking a completely new approach. So today we're going to take a look at some of the highlights. With that being said, let's get right into the video.
Welcome back, everyone, to the CNN Town Hall event live from St. Ansel College, right here in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm Don Lemon. Thank you so much for joining us. Please welcome to the stage right now, businessman Andrew Yang. Hello, Manchester. I knew you were going to bring it. How are you? Welcome.
I'm doing great.
Good to see you.
Hello, New Hampshire. It's great to be back.
First, I wanted to just highlight the amount of energy Andrew Yang came out to this interview with, even after what a lot of people would call a disheartening Iowa caucus. Like we always talk about on this channel, Yang never answers questions about Trump like the other candidates. Just take a look at this clip.
I want to talk to you about something that just happened just a couple hours ago. The president was acquitted by the U.S. Senate. You tweeted last June about the impeachment, and I'm going to get this right. You said, well, we fail, we rally the GOP base, and we play into Trump's hands. Do you think this acquittal made President Trump harder to beat in November?
I think the ongoing polarization of our country is making Donald Trump harder to beat in November. The fact is, many Americans have regarded this impeachment process like a football game or a baseball game where you know what the score is going to be at the end. And that's the way it played out, unfortunately. I just want to congratulate Senator Mitt Romney for voting his conscience and character. But he was the lone Republican to do so, which was disappointing but not wholly surprising. We have to bring the country together, solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. That's how we're going to defeat him in the fall.
Now in this next clip, the interviewer is going to ask Yang about what happened in Iowa, and the way Yang responds is the reason all his supporters haven't lost any hope in their candidate.
I know not 100% of the count is in, but let me ask you, since we're talking about Iowa, you got 5% of the vote in Iowa during the first round, but you weren't viable in many precincts, which means you earned about 1% of the state delegates equivalent. What happened? What do you think?
Well, 5% was about where we were polling when we went in, but Bill Clinton got less than 3% in Iowa in 1992. He went on to do great here in New Hampshire and become president for 2 terms. We're hoping we can follow in his footsteps.
All right. Thank you. So let's move over a little bit this way. So there we go. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Doc.
I just want to make sure you're in your light and that you're in your best light. So let's go to the audience. So I want to bring in Hannah Robinson. She's from Bow, New Hampshire. She works in philanthropy and is still undecided in this primary. Hannah, what's your question?
Hi, welcome to New Hampshire. There's a shortage of skilled workers, but few ways to obtain a credential without incurring debt. Both traditional aged and adult students must find a career path that provides a good salary and advancement opportunities. Many are given false promises due to unfair recruitment practices at for-profit institutions, resulting in significant student debt and no credential. How do you address this problem and help grow the workforce?
Thank you for this question, Hannah. This is something I'm very, very passionate about because we have millions of unfilled jobs in this country that are left wanting for workers with the right technical skills and training to fill these jobs. And many of these jobs are very solid, stable, lucrative, middle-class jobs. On the flip side, you have workers who are trying to gain access to those jobs, but they don't have access to the training from the get-go. One thing I would do as president is I would invest in technical, vocational, and apprenticeship training at the high school levels in New Hampshire and around the country. The fact is only 6% of American high school students are in technical or trade programs right now here in the US. In Germany, that's 59%. So think of that gulf and think about how many unfilled jobs would go filled if we had the right people with the right skills, and all of the young people that right now are getting steered towards college that would be better served by heading into the trades and technical and apprenticeship programs. So this is a nationwide problem that we need to invest billions, tens of billions of dollars in on the federal level. and say to communities, if you want to build a vocational or trade or apprenticeship program, we will help you do so.
This is exactly what Yang needs to do. People know all about his universal basic income policy, so it's time for Yang to show the country that he is much more than just universal basic income and that he has solutions to modern problems that are actually viable.
Hey, Mr. Yang, welcome back to New Hampshire. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chris.
I absolutely love New Hampshire. This is my home. It is under threat from climate change, though. We already have regularly sunny day flooding on the seacoast. Our winter sports industry is under threat. I'm worried that our whole ecosystem will be destabilized within my lifetime. So given that fossil fuel use is the primary driver of climate change, what will you do to phase out fossil fuels as quickly as possible?
Well, thank you for the question, Chris. I actually went to high school here in the state. I graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy in 1992, and my first time skiing was here in the state. So when you talk about how transforming climate is actually going to gut some of the tourism industries here in the state, those are actually some of my fondest childhood memories. Climate change is devastating regional economies right here in New Hampshire. When I was in Portsmouth, I saw buildings that were flooding regularly. I saw a shrimping business that was shrinking fast because the warming waters are killing the shrimp. So we have to acknowledge that we're already on the curve of climate change. When politicians talk about preventing climate change, I get frustrated because you can't prevent something that is already here and having disastrous effects around the country. So I would zero out the billions and billions of dollars of subsidies that are going to these fossil fuel companies that are way, way past their sell-by date. I would take those subsidies, move them to wind and solar, and then I would put a price on carbon immediately so that polluters actually have to pay into a system that will help reduce emissions. The toughest part of this, Chris, is that the United States of America is only 15% of global emissions. So even if we were to aggressively get our emissions down, you're still going to face a warming planet over time because 85% of emissions are coming from outside our borders. And what's happening in Africa right now is that China is showing up with coal-burning power plants and saying, "What do you think?" And then what is the African government saying in response? Yes, I'll take it, because they don't care about emissions. They just want energy as cheaply as possible. So if we're going to get our arms around this problem in a realistic way, we have to be at that table with the African government saying, do not take this coal-burning power plant, take these solar panels instead, and we will subsidize them to the level where it will be a no-brainer for you. That's the direction we need to go, and that's where I would lead as president.
You got two.
I thought this guy gave Yang an amazing opportunity to show people his extensive environmental plan, not just nationally, but globally. This next clip is more of a strange one than anything that I wanted to highlight because it's kind of off topic and has nothing to do with politics, and you can tell Yang is caught off guard by it too, and it makes you question what CNN's real agenda is.
Young sons, right? How old are they?
Yes, I have two young boys, Christopher and Damien. They're 7 and 4.
Okay, so they're going to be dealing with the climate crisis more than our generation. Do you talk to them about it? And if so, how do you do that?
I have not talked to them about climate change yet. My kids are kind of oblivious, honestly. I tell them that Daddy has a very big deadline on Tuesday. He'll be traveling. So right now, they don't even know that I'm running for president or have a real understanding of what that means.
But are you going to talk to them? Because this is something that you'll have to talk to them, like, you know, you got to talk about the birds and the bees. You're probably going to have to talk to them about climate change. Have you decided? Have you thought about that?
Don, where do you get these parenting campaigns? It's like birds and the bees. My kids are 7 and 4. What are you talking about? I think at this point, many children will be exposed to lessons about climate change during their school, in elementary school, grade school. But if they don't know by the time they get to a certain age, of course I'll sit down with them and let them know that we have left them a total mess and we are sorry, and Daddy's going to do his best to clean it up for them and every other family in this country.
All right.
This next clip has to be one of Yang's brightest moments of this whole thing, as he takes what's pretty much a trap question from the interview and flips it to really highlight what's wrong with just basing our country off how well our economy is doing, and talks about issues we don't hear about from other candidates and shows why Trump is so scared of Yang.
A bit more about the economy, because there's a new poll that was out yesterday from Gallup. 63% of Americans approve of how this President Trump, is handling the economy. That is a high for him. How do you run against that?
Well, when I talk to families here in New Hampshire, they know that we have record high corporate profits right now in the United States. What else are at record highs in the United States right now? Suicides, stress, anxiety, mental illness, student loan debt for those of you who are in school here, medical bankruptcies, record lows in the United States right now, starting a business for a young person, getting married, having a child. The fact is 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and almost half can't afford an unexpected $500 bill in the good times. The vast majority of the new jobs we're creating in this economy are temp, gig, or contract jobs that do not have meaningful benefits and often don't have a path forward. If you're a college graduate and you recently came out of school, there's a 40 to 44% chance you're going to do a job that does not require a college degree. And does the school come back and say, hey, we'll forgive your loans in that case? No, of course not. So this economy, again, is the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of the world. And many, many Americans do not feel like they're being included in the gains. And when you ask Americans what else are at record highs in this country, we all know that all of these terrible social ills are at record highs right now, because even as the companies do better, we do not feel those gains in our own families and our own communities.
Deborah.
Here's a clip of a Bernie supporter asking Yang why he thinks he's best equipped to beat Trump, and the way he answers the question is the same way he will beat Trump, using math.
Yang, do you feel that you are the best equipped candidate to beat President Trump on the debate stage, and why?
Thank you for this question. I'd love it so much, because the number one criteria that Democratic primary voters have for the nominee is what? Beat Donald Trump. That's right. And here's why I am the best person to beat Donald Trump in the general election. So I'm a numbers guy in New Hampshire, and people who are betting their hard-earned money on these head-to-head matchups have me as the heaviest betting favorite against Donald Trump in the general election. I'm the 3-2 favorite. Everyone else, including Bernie, is at best even money. So why is it that people think I'm the best, toughest matchup? Because 18% of college Republicans said they would choose me over Donald Trump in the general election. Because 10% of New Hampshire Trump voters in one poll said that they would choose me over Trump in the general election. You know who has already figured out that I'm his toughest matchup? Donald Trump. I am the only candidate in the field he has not tweeted a word about. And he has not tweeted a word about me for two reasons. Number one, he knows I'm better at the internet than he is. And number two, his most potent attacks are that you're a corrupt DC politician, and none of this stuff works on me. One of his advisors was quoted in a meeting that was caught on film saying the candidate they're most worried about is Andrew Yang. And as more Democrats realize that I am the candidate that's best situated to defeat Donald Trump soundly in the general election, the stronger this campaign will grow and the more likely I become the nominee. Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about Mr. Yang, the only Democrat who's debated President Trump is Secretary Clinton, right? And she said that he stood behind her. She wrote that he stood behind her during a debate. And this is a quote, literally breathing down my neck. My skin crawled. She said that, right? I'm quoting. What do you do if he tries to intimidate you on stage?
Well, I think I make an incredible foil for Donald Trump because I can make him seem ridiculous. Certainly, if he breathes down my neck, I would look around and I would just laugh at him, and my energy, I think, contrasts very, very nicely with him, where he's all bluster and braggadocio. I'm like Spock and ice to his fire. But the main reason why Trump voters are coming my way is that I'm laser focused on solving the problems that got him into the White House to begin with. The fact that many Americans feel left behind, the fact that we blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs in the swing states that Trump needed to win, and that we need to actually rewrite the rules of this economy so that everyone feels included. Because the fact is, technology is getting stronger, faster, more capable all the time, and we are not. Aside from the young people in this room, most of the adults feel fortunate just to not get dumber on any given day. If we can find our keys, that was a good day. But the technology is ramping up faster and faster. It has already eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs in the Midwest and is in the process of transforming economies right here in New Hampshire and around the country. As Amazon alone closes 30% of your stores and malls, retail clerks, the most common job in the economy, And 30% of those jobs are disappearing as we speak.
You want to stick around for a little bit?
Of course.
All right. Well, we're going to be right back with more from presidential candidate Andrew Yang right after this.
Before we move into the next clip, I just want to say that this clip right here needs to be highlighted and shared more than anything else. Once people realize that Yang is the only real threat to Trump, there will be a wave of new supporters like we have never seen before, and this notion that Andrew Yang is, quote, weak will be finally crushed. This next clip shows Andrew Yang talking about the drug issues in the country from a unique perspective, and I may sound like a broken record, but he does it like no other candidate has done, and that's because he does it from the perspective of a citizen and not a politician.
Another issue that affecting mental health for many Americans, substance abuse. You not only want to legalize marijuana, but you also want to decriminalize small amounts of opioids like heroin and fentanyl. I mean, even Senator Bernie Sanders has made it clear, and I quote here, he says, marijuana is not the same as heroin. What do you say to voters who think that this is a bridge too far?
Well, it was a high school student who told me that his classmates have fentanyl patches on their shoulders and they're already addicted. They'll never seek help because it's an illegal substance. So he said, what are we going to do for them? And the fact is, this epidemic, this opiate plague that has been tearing apart your communities here in New Hampshire for years, is a plague that our government facilitated, essentially. Purdue Pharma dispensed millions of OxyContin prescriptions, marketing as a non-addictive wonder drug, to the point where there were more opiate prescriptions in the state of Ohio than there were human beings in the state of Ohio at one point. And our government signed off on that and said that's okay. And we're still struggling with the impact to this day. So the question is, how are you going to help your people actually get better and stronger and get off of these drugs? First, you have to get back all the blood money from Purdue Pharma and the other drug companies, take all the billions of dollars away and say this is going to be a down payment on treatment for our people to help them get stronger and better. But the second thing you have to do is you have to say to our people, look, this is not an individual failing. This is a plague that our government essentially helped happen. It's a plague of hyper-capitalism run amok. And if we catch you struggling with drugs, we are going to refer you to counseling and treatment and not to a prison cell. This is what other countries have done. It has reduced substance abuse rates and overdose rates. And this is what we should do in the United States of America. I think Bernie's wrong on this.
So here's when people hear decriminalize, I would think that they think legalize. That's not what you mean. There's a difference between decriminalizing and legalizing a substance. You don't want to legalize heroin. You don't want to legalize fentanyl, right? So explain the difference. What do you mean?
What you do is you say to your police departments, essentially, we should stop prosecuting this crime if someone's an addict and has drugs below a certain level. If they're a dealer, if they're profiting, they go straight to jail. But if they're struggling with addiction, they should not be heading to jail. They should be heading to counseling and treatment. And we should have safe injection sites so that if someone actually is trying to recover, they have someplace they can go. It was here in New Hampshire where an EMT told me that he saved someone from overdosing 1 week, and then what's he doing the following week? Saving the same person in the same place over and over again. And then one time he gets there and it's too late and that person's dead. And it was literally the 4th or 5th time that he had to save that individual in that apartment. And he said to me in an impassioned way, we need someplace for that person to go after I save them so I don't have to try and save them again the following week.
But you know it doesn't just affect that individual. It affects the entire family. So what do you do for families who are suffering from addiction? Not just them personally, but maybe it's a family member who's doing it.
And that's exactly right, Don, because these are not isolated problems. They're destroying families, they're destroying communities. There's nothing we can do to give people their children, their loved ones back, but we can give them a real path forward where if your loved one is struggling with addiction, imagine a world where you could refer them to treatment and there was not a fear that they were going to get thrown in jail, that there was an actual place they could go physically that has treatment resources available to them, that they don't have to come home or go home alone where you're worried about them. What are they going to do when they're alone? You can say, look, don't be alone. Go to this place where someone will actually look after you and make sure that you don't overdose.
But if I can just follow quickly, because what I'm trying to get at is if you want to take the stigma away, you have to involve the family, because many times in the family's embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
Or they even think that there's a stigma to it. So I'm asking you, what do you do for the family of an individual to try to help with that?
Don, when I talk to family members of people who've been struggling with opiate addiction, their first and foremost concern is not the stigma. Their first and foremost concern is whether their loved one's actually going to get well, get treatment, and not overdose. So if your relative, your brother, your son is struggling, you would be thrilled just to have some place to go with them. You're more concerned about their life and safety than you are what the neighbors might think.
Thank you for answering that. Jane.
This next clip is amazing as Yang addresses every single issue relating to gun violence in the country, all the way from legislation and all the way down to mental health.
Vance is standing right there. She's a retired teacher from New London, New Hampshire, and she says she is undecided. Jane?
Hi.
This will be an ongoing fun thing. Hey, Jane.
Gun violence has reached epidemic proportions. Each time another horrific shooting occurs, politicians offer their prayers and thoughts, but do absolutely nothing concrete to stop another tragic shooting from occurring. If Republicans retain control of the Senate, how do you plan on getting common sense gun legislation passed?
Well, thank you for all you've done for our children over the years, Jane. I've got two kids, one in public school, the other one is autistic and in a special needs school, so I appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you.
My younger son's school had active shooter drills a number of weeks ago, and he's 4 years old. And I looked at the studies I could find and tried to find studies that said that active shooter drills make our kids safer, and I could not find any evidence that they do. I then tried to find evidence that the shooter drills make our kids anxious, concerned, stressed out, and confused, and I found a whole stack. So we should be making these active shooter drills optional for families and communities and not requiring them at the government level. If the parents want them, great, but if parents don't want to send our kids the message that they have to be in fear of their classmates and that their life could be in danger at any moment, then I think that should be the parents and the community's choice. That said, how do we actually get the common sense gun safety laws that the vast majority of Americans agree on passed? And right now the problem is that the NRA has a stranglehold on a certain number of legislators who feel like their seat will be in jeopardy if they decide to go against that lobby. And this is not just the NRA, unfortunately. This is the drug companies, this is the tech companies, this is the fossil fuel companies. So if we're going to pass common sense gun safety laws in this country, we need to actually break the lobbyist stranglehold in our government. And my proposal to do that is to put 100 democracy dollars in the hands of every American around the country that you can give to any candidate or campaign you want each year, use it or lose it. If we were to do this, we would wash out the lobbyist cash that has overrun our government by a factor of 4 to 1. And then legislators would actually feel free to vote their conscience and what their constituents want. I believe that would help us pass common sense gun safety laws in this country. I also think there's a lot we can do even as we're trying to get those laws passed, because there's a whole string of causes that contribute to gun violence in our communities. We have to face facts that 98% of the shooters we're talking about in the school environments are boys. We have a real boy to men problem in this country. And as the father of an autistic son, I know if you have the wrong boy in the wrong school, very bad things can happen, generally just to that boy and his family, but sometimes something that's external in the community. And too many of our schools don't have appropriate resources for kids who are neurologically atypical or struggling and they get pushed to the side, particularly boys who are in this position. Right now, the United States Congress funds 15% of special needs education resources for our kids. I want to take that to 100% and get this burden off of communities. I want to invest in a mental health infrastructure. I want to try and decrease the supply of guns in our country through a perpetual evergreen buyback that is in effect. So anytime a gun owner wants to sell a gun, they can just sell it back to the government to try and get the supply down. And then I want to offer every gun owner in the country a complimentary personalization upgrade where only they can fire the gun based upon their palm print and the size of their hand. This way, if the gun gets, let's say, taken by their kid, then it's useless because they can't fire it. And if you're a gun owner, you actually kind of like this personalization upgrade because it makes your gun cooler. It's like a James Bond personalization. like show your friends being like, only I can fire this, but it also makes us all safer. So there are things we need to do to try and attack the gun violence problem at every level, from our families, our schools, our mental health infrastructure, the supply of guns. But you're 100% right. It needs to start at the top. We need to break the stranglehold of the NRA on our legislators and get them to vote along with the will of the American people.
Yeah. Can we talk about, as I'm standing here listening to you, you've been...
This audience member asked Yang about data, and Yang's response is what he needs to do more often, because we know that UBI is based a lot off of our data being the new oil, but Yang needs to do what he does in this clip and explain why.
You got a nice running
Mr.
joke
Yang.
here.
My question is, as seen throughout the last decade, the internet has exploded in all facets, imaginable and not. In today's online world, the most sought after information is personal data. Where you shop, what you buy, where you live, what you watch, all of this information being recorded by companies such as Google. How will you, as president, protect American citizens' privacy in the digital age, and specifically, how will this be applied within your national security agency?
I love this question so much because this is one of the foremost issues of our time that we are not properly even thinking about addressing. So what do you do when you sign up with a technology company and you get that big agreement and it says, I agree, and then submit? How many of you read that agreement? None of us reads that agreement. We just click, I agree, and we just hope for the best. And then that company ends up selling and reselling our data to the tune of billions and billions of dollars a year. Our data is now worth more than oil. Think about that for a second. Our data is getting sold and resold over and over again, and we're none the wiser. We're not seeing a dime of it. So to me, New Hampshire, this is a crucial issue. We have to say that our data is ours. And if we choose to share it with a technology company, that is fine, but it is still ours, and we should have a bill of rights around our data. Number one, you have to tell us every time you do something with it. There needs to be an audit trail. You need to say, look, I sold it to them, I resold it to them. Number two, we need to share in any value you're receiving for our data. If you're going to get money from our data, then we deserve a cut. Number three, we can change our preferences and turn this off whenever we want. Because again, it's our information, and just because we decided to share it on your platform for a certain period of time should not be some kind of lifelong commitment that we can't undo. Our information should still be ours. If we do not make this kind of move, then we're going to continue to be, frankly, in position where these tech companies can know us better than our best friends and family know us, and can help lead us to make decisions that we think we're making, but we could be led there by literally dozens or hundreds of images and messages and digital breadcrumbs. So as president, I would champion a privacy set of rights that Americans must enjoy, because right now we are getting completely outgunned by these technology companies. We have no negotiating power. Again, we just hit I agree and just hope for the best. In America, New Hampshire, the best is not happening. We have to make it so that our government is actually a counterweight to these technology companies and looking out for us and our data rights. And right now, our government is completely behind the curve on these technology issues. We are 25 years behind. How can I say that with such precision? We got rid of the Office of Technology Assessment in 1995. So Congress has had no independent guidance on technology issues for 2.5 decades. Think about everything that has happened in the last 25 years. As president, I will speed up our government, get it fighting for us, and that includes our data rights and our data dignity.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and if you like content like this, make sure to subscribe, as we will be posting a new video almost every other day. But with that being said, thanks for watching and have a nice day, folks.